Hey everyone, this is Rabbi Moshe Rothschild from the Israel Alliance coming to you for the week ending December 17th, 2020, bringing you the summary of the news from Israel. We do all the work. We watch the news. We scan the newspapers. We summarize everything that you need to know so you can just relax all week and rely upon our summaries. So we're very excited that you're joining us here. Let's start with the top of the news. This week, Netanyahu celebrated our new peace normalization deal with Morocco by saying, and I quote, "This will be a very warm peace." It was announced after I recorded the news last week that Israel and Morocco agreed to a normalization agreement as announced by President Donald Trump. This is the fourth Arab-Israel agreement in 4 months, which is incredible. Israel has signed normalization agreements with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, with Sudan, and now Morocco, which is unbelievable. So if you think that's incredible, that God is working miracles, write amen in the chat box below. By the way, let me know who's out here. Tell me your name, where you're from. We'd love to know who's watching us. Let's go on. Now, in less good news, Israel is facing perhaps its third lockdown because of COVID, even as the vaccines arrived earlier in Israel. But the number of cases passed 2,500 in one day, which was the mark the government set for restoring restrictions. So we will see what happens. If you're just joining us, let us know where you're from in the comments below. I'd love to see where everyone's from. In a poll this week, the new political party in Israel, which is a break-off from Netanyahu's party, according to the polls, it would become, if the elections were held today, the second largest party in the Knesset, led by Gideon Sa'ar, who's a rival of the leader of the Likud, which is, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu. Right now, Israel is slated to go to our fourth election in 2 years in March. Jared Kushner will lead a diplomatic mission to Israel, diplomatic delegation, to Morocco, and he'll be accompanied by officials from Israel as well. They will fly directly from Ben Gurion Airport to Morocco. Netanyahu this week appointed a new head of the Israel's Mossad spy agency, and he's simply identified with the initial D. So we don't know who it is. Well, I can assure you it's not me, because my first name is an M. So that narrows it down a little bit. This week, the Palestinians, it was reported, are pressuring two Arab countries here, Oman and Qatar, not to recognize Israel. But the fourth Arab country recognizing, normalizing with Israel, this puts pressure on the Palestinians. They don't want any more countries to recognize Israel. So they're putting pressure on Qatar and Oman not to recognize Israel. So just very briefly, this is the new, in my opinion, path to peace. Let all the Arab nations normalize with Israel. And then the last thing we should focus on are any kind of deal with the so-called Palestinians. Until now, it's been the opposite with every U.S. administration. But this present administration, the Trump administration, has taken the correct path, in my opinion. A Lebanese woman gets 3 years of hard labor for quote unquote collaborating with Israel. What did she do? On social media, she harshly criticized the Hezbollah terrorist group and the Lebanese president. And this week she was sentenced in a military court to 3 years of hard labor for what? For speaking the truth. If you're just joining us, put your name down below. And folks, that's the world we are living in, sadly enough. Netanyahu said business as usual with Iran will be a huge mistake while he was speaking at a press conference with Robert O'Brien, who's Trump's national security advisor. His comments appeared to be aimed at Joe Biden, saying that we cannot go back to business as usual with Iran. And that would be a horrible, horrible mistake. And believe me, in Israel, we're very concerned about that. And let's end with a fun story. Israeli Deni Avdija, who played his very first NBA preseason game. Remember, he's an Israeli who was drafted number 9 into the NBA, the highest Israeli ever drafted into the NBA in his very first game. It was nearly perfect, could not have gone better. The 6'9" forward, Israeli forward, scored 15 points in 24 minutes, shooting with 100% accuracy. That's incredible, just like the news here. He was 3 for 3 from 3-point range and scored 6 points from the field. Very, very exciting. Anyhow, folks, let us know in the comments, what you think of the news, how you feel about Israel. Anything you'd like, we'd love to hear from you. We love when you guys interact with us. Let us know where you're from. We bless you from Israel, wishing you a wonderful Shabbat, Sabbath, great weekend. And we're excited for all the new amazing news that's going to happen this week. Maybe more Arab countries are going to normalize with Israel. Remember, it is the 7th day of Hanukkah. Tonight, Thursday night, we will light the 8th candle. The final day of Hanukkah begins tonight and will end Friday at sundown or when it gets dark with the Shabbat. So we're very excited to have a lot of light on this final day of Hanukkah, wishing you blessings and Shabbat.